Welcome to the coral reef. Coral reefs are located in shallow, clear portions of the ocean in mostly tropical areas, including the coasts of East Africa, South India, Australia, Florida, the Caribbean, and Brazil. Coral reefs are scattered throughout the tropical and subtropical West Atlantic and Indo-Pacific Oceans, generally within 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south latitudes. Coral reefs generally get about 80 inches of rain and have temperatures between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground around coral reefs is made up of sediment and a soft sandy bottom. However, the base of coral reefs is made up of dead polyps that form limestone. The live polyps have hard exoskeletons formed from calcium carbonate and group together in colonies, allowing the coral reefs to grow. Coral reefs can tolerate a narrow range of salinity, between 30 and 40 parts per thousand. Waters tend to be nutritionally poor, and coral reefs obtain nutrients through the algae that grows on them via the photosynthesis. Coral reefs are also made up of zones. The first zone is the inner coral reef, or the shore side, where water is shallow and nutrients can be high due to runoff. The next zone is the coral reef crest. This is the area where coral experiences high water and energy flow from breaking waves. Corals here are also used to high light levels. The outer coral reef is the side of the coral reef facing the ocean and consists of the wall in the deepest area with high water flow and high light intensity. The lagoon is the last zone of the coral reef. It can form between land and the coral reef, and is mostly associated with barrier reefs and atolls. Abiotic limiting factors also exist in coral reefs. These are light, temperature, and sedimentation. Light is a limiting factor because photosynthesis is needed for the algae that grows on the coral, as well as the zooxanthellae that live in the tissue of the coral polyps. Temperature is a limiting factor because if the water is too cold, many corals will die and become bleached out by expelling zooxanthellae. Sedimentation is also a limiting factor because high sedimentation hinders coral growth by burying and killing the corals. Coral reefs additionally have main producers and consumers. Some of the main producers in coral reefs are zooxanthellae, turf algae, coralline algae, and seagrass. These cluster around the coral and use photosynthesis. Some of the main consumers are sponges, lobsters, starfish, and sea turtles. Some common predator-prey relationships also include anemones and clownfish, tiger sharks and green sea turtles, and fish doctors and any fish. Anemones create toxins to keep away predators. However, clownfish have become immune to the toxins. The tiger shark and green sea turtle. The turtle has a hard shell, however, the tiger shark's bite is so forceful it breaks through the shell. The fish doctor is an isopod crustacean that attaches itself under the fins, scales, or gills of its host and sucks all of the blood of its host until it dies. There are many plant and animal adaptations within coral reefs. An example of a plant adaptation is how the zooxanthellae live in the polyps in the coral. In exchange for the protection the coral provides, the zooxanthellae provide the coral with needed nutrients. Examples of animal adaptations are how the fish have adapted a new body structure to easily maneuver through coral by having bodies that are flat and also having the pectoral and pelvic fins switch places. They also have brighter coloring to help with mating and camouflage. Also, sessile animals such as coral have adapted toxins to keep away predators. Even with their recognized beauty, humans continue to have a negative impact on coral reefs. Two examples of this are through unsustainable tourism and pollution. With tourism, coral reefs generate large amounts of income for host countries. Physical damage to reefs can occur through contact from careless swimmers, divers, and poorly placed boat anchors. This causes parts of the reef to break off and die. This can be resolved through stricter regulations and enforcement of boats anchoring around reefs, as well as mandatory reef conservation courses while getting scuba certified, as well as fines with the damaging of reefs. Pollution is a major environmental impact on coral reefs because coral reefs need clean water to thrive. From litter to oil waste, pollution is extremely harmful to reefs. Litter can break off parts of reefs or block its necessary sunlight, causing the reefs to break off or become bleached and die. While runoff can increase algae blooms and create competition for new coral growth as well as block sunlight, this can be avoided by making sure you properly dispose of trash as well as decrease the amount of unnatural herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers that are used that could run off into the water. Endangered species that resides in the coral reefs is a hawkbill sea turtle. Hawkbill sea turtles spend their time in coral reefs, lagoons, mangroves, oceanic islands, and shallow coastal areas. Hawkbill sea turtles are named for their narrow head and sharp bird-like beak that they use to reach into crevices of coral reefs looking for food. They feed almost exclusively on sponges. Because of this, they play an important role in the reef community by aiding corals in growth. Without them, sponges have the ability to overgrow corals and suffocate reefs. Hawkbill sea turtles have been considered critically endangered since 2008. Characteristics that make them vulnerable to extinction are their return to the same feeding and nesting areas, their slow speed, and their valuable shells. Current threats to the hawkbill sea turtles are the destruction of coral reefs, loss of nesting areas through human development, pollution of oceans by chemicals and garbage, harvesting of turtles for their shells, leather, meat, and eggs, and deaths in drift nets, gill nets, shrimp trawling nets, and other fishing gear. There are only about 20,000 female hawkbill sea turtles remaining in the wild. Hawkbill turtles are protected by various international treaties, agreements, and national laws. They're listed in Appendix 1 of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. This means that international trade is prohibited. Also, hawkbill sea turtles are classified by the World Conservation Union as critically endangered. Accidental capture by fishermen is being reduced by fishing gear modifications, as well as changes in fishing practices and closures of certain areas to fishing during nesting and hatching seasons. There's also been designations of critical habitat areas around Puerto Rico. Additionally, there are regular monitoring of hawkbill turtles by NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service, which only partially successful because their shells are still traded internationally. However, these turtles are still listed as endangered under the